This is Rajhan, a town in the Punjab, where it's hard to believe there was drought here just a few months ago. But the driest months in Pakistan's history have been followed by some of the wettest, from record heatwave to a monsoon delivering nearly 3 times as much rain as usual. Further north, only helicopters can reach some of those cut off by flash floods and landslides. This man was rescued from the rock he was clinging to, but the livelihoods of over 30 million people have been affected across all 4 provinces of Pakistan. Near the Afghan border, this bridge was washed away, along with the road on the other side. Millions of acres of farmland have been destroyed. The Indus River flows across Pakistan, the country's lifeblood, and now the source of its destruction, leaving Rehan Ali amongst millions waiting for government help and thinking of moving to a city or town, even if that help arrives.
I
don't think I can rebuild a shack on my own. I'm worried about food. Because of flooding, I don't think I can find any job. I'm extremely upset.
While the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif visited those displaced near Peshawar, his ministers talked of a climate crisis causing at least $10 billion of losses. But others blame poor building on floodplains and politicians diverting resources to where the most votes are.
We didn't learn the lessons from the devastating floods of 2010. I still remember that at that time there was this flood protection plan, and had we stuck to that plan and implemented its recommendation, perhaps the gravity of human disaster that one is facing today, that could have been minimized.
And much power rests with the army chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, who's called for more foreign aid, especially from Pakistanis abroad. Though the army's critics say the military are more focused on protecting national security infrastructure, including dams, rather than the plight of small landowners.
Sure, the military has the resources to send helicopters or whatever and rescue people. But beyond that, for the kind of long-term planning, it's very, very difficult for the military to be able to see beyond what it considers security or strategic priority.
These buffalo survived, but hundreds of thousands of livestock are thought to have drowned. As has Pakistan's date harvest, which is brought in just once a year, but has now been wiped out here. And even more of the country could be underwater by the end of September, when the rains usually stop.
A short while ago, I spoke to Pakistan's Minister for Planning and Development, Ahsan Iqbal, and I began by asking him if his government had not sufficiently learned the lessons from previous floods.
Yeah, the 2010 floods came through rivers. They were not from the rains. We have seen uninterrupted rain for 3 months. And the interesting point is that the rain came in those areas which traditionally were receiving very low rainfall in Pakistan. Historically, they have never received even half of this rainfall.
But isn't it also the case that the people in power authorised the building of large infrastructure projects in the north that then funneled more water, too much water, down to Sindh province, for example?
No, as I said, that the cause of this flooding was not water flowing from the rivers in the north of the country. The rain happened in certain provinces of Pakistan, and it was a very different pattern of rain that has never happened. So the infrastructure in those areas, because they never received even moderate or higher rainfalls, was not equipped to handle this kind of flash floods in those areas. So this has been really a calamity on them.
People on the ground accuse the government of sparing the most important areas and people and sacrificing instead those downstream, less important economically. What do you say to those allegations?
You see, if you'll see now, recently there have been these floods are coming after very warm water in Kentucky, in West Virginia, in Texas, in the United States. So would we say that the government was negligent there. Sudan is also facing similar calamity. Earlier, this monsoon season brought similar, but to a lesser degree, calamity in Bangladesh, in India. So I don't think that we can throw the blame of this catastrophe coming from climate change on the developing countries or the host countries. This is a phenomena of the global weather, climate change, and I would say that the developed countries whose irresponsible development has brought this havoc on developing countries like us, we have a very small footprint in terms of our carbon emissions, even less than 1%. But we are the 7th most vulnerable country in terms of the climate change. So there is a responsibility that the international community and the developed world has to help those countries which are becoming victims of their irresponsible development to put up this heavy infrastructure cost.
You mentioned that Pakistan is not a big polluter, not a big contributor to climate change. So are there lessons here for the world about how urgent now it is to address those challenges and what richer nations can do to stop more vulnerable nations bearing the brunt of this?
I think this is a bit clear proof that climate change is a reality. It is not a fiction. And we all need to contribute if we want to make this globe a safe place. And we at least owe it to our future generations that what we have lived through, if we had access to clean air, if we had access to a safer life, we need to pass it on to our next generations. And that will only happen if we all work together to fight the global warming.
Ahsan Iqbal, thank you very much for joining us.